All right. Good morning, and well, good morning for the UK, and welcome to our visa on how to extend your working holiday visa via specified work. This is going to talk about, in particular, kind of the 417 and 462 visas. We'll kind of run into those details. So this is about, how to extend those visas and stay beyond 1 year. We'll get started with a bit of an introduction. Oops, sorry. So my name is Annika. I'm one of the UK-based global opportunities consultants that supports educators from the UK and Ireland making the journey over to Australia. I'm based in our Bristol office, though we have offices kind of across Wales, Southwest London, Southeast London, Southwest, Southeast England. We've got offices in London and Surrey and Southampton as well. So we're kind of spread across the UK. We have quite a few team members based here that support European, Irish, and UK based educators with making the journey abroad. I was trained as a TA back in Canada, and I worked in Australia in Melbourne for a year as a supply teaching assistant and within SEN schools. And then in 2020, I moved over to the UK and I worked with ANZ as well here as a supply teaching assistant. And then about 2.5 years ago, I moved internal with ANZ UK. So I've been working as a global opportunities consultant for that time now. And then I'm also joined by my colleague, Aisling.
Hi, my name is Aisling. I am from Ireland. I'm originally a primary school teacher. I moved over to Australia in 2023, so December 2023. I actually worked casually in Victoria and in New South Wales, so Sydney and Melbourne. And I have been with ANZ UK since since January 24, so just nearly hitting the 8th month now. Yeah, so my role is international recruiter. So I help people coming from UK, Ireland, anyone overseas, onshore into New South Wales and Sydney, get them set up with all of their numbers and everything, and then hand them over to the various teams, whether it's going perm or whether it's going temp. And yeah, trying to, I suppose, help as much people as possible making the move since I've done it myself.
Lovely, thanks, Ash. Great. So throughout the webinar today, it's not going to be a super long webinar. It's kind of a brief overview, but what we'll be covering is a bit of an introduction into ANZ UK, who we are, what we do, why move overseas, some information on kind of benefits of making that journey and doing that. We're going to run through the 417 and 462 working holiday visa, so you have a bit of an understanding of kind of how those visas work, what's involved in those, what are the requirements, other things like that. Then we're going to run into what is specified work and the logistics of specified work, how to use that to extend your 417 or 462 visas, when to complete the specified work, what's the best time of year to do that, and then we'll also run through, community and support that we provide, and we'll go through any questions that we might have as well.
Thanks, Annika. So just to introduce you to ANZ UK. So we are an education recruitment agencies. We've been operating for 20 years so it was founded in 2004. We have over 300 staff globally with 21 offices globally in Australia. We've one in Sydney, Melbourne, South Australia, Perth. We've another office in Queensland, and we also have our rural consultants as well. Annika mentioned all of the offices in the UK. We also have an office in Canada, New Zealand, and we have people dotted around Europe as well working there. We also have Scoot in America as well, which is underneath the ANZ UK umbrella as well. So yeah, there's a lot of us around, and we're here to help you with your journey as much as possible. So first of all, why teach abroad? So there's many reasons. I'm an advocate for it. I think Annika is too. We've both moved quite far from our home countries. So I suppose looking at personal growth, stepping out of your comfort zone, developing a more cultural awareness as well, and experience living in another country. It's opened my eyes completely as to different teaching methods, different cultures, everything. It's a really good way to, I suppose, extend your knowledge past your home country. Career development as well, overseas teaching experience is highly regarded. You also get a reference from a principal if you're after getting a contract. And I suppose working with another curriculum and showing that you can work with changes in a curriculum as well is really good. Financially rewarding as well. Life experience, making friends all over the world, travel opportunities like Australia's other side of the world, and there's so many opportunities to move. Expat community, educator community. And that's one thing as well that's really kind of struck with me as well. Even though I am Irish, I don't know. There's a lot of people from Ireland and the UK coming over at the moment. We've started running introduction sessions as well, so everyone can meet. If you're after arriving in 2 weeks, you can come and meet every educator who potentially could have been on your plane. As well, we do have a huge expat community, so we run events as well to make sure that everyone um, has someone there who's been through a similar situation. It's always nice to have a buddy as well.
Thanks, Ash. Great. So we'll get into the visas now, kind of the nitty-gritty of everything. So a couple of the options for visas that you can use to get into Australia to live and work there is there's a 417 and 462 working holiday visas. So we're going to talk about the 417 initially. Now, down in that kind of bottom left corner is a list of all the countries that can use this visa. So you see a lot of kind of the Commonwealth countries in there as well. Some countries can use this visa up until the age of 36. It does say under 35, but it's kind of under 36 really. And then those other countries that aren't specified, they're going to be under 31 you can use this visa for. So the working holiday visa, typically we see that this visa is processed quite quickly. So the cost is about 635, Australian dollars. So, if you're in the UK, that might cost you about £330. You do need to show proof that you have the equivalent of 5,000 Australian dollars when you make the application, because you need to show that you can support yourself while you're living there and everything. Most of the applications, though, are processed usually within a matter of minutes. We see educators come back with those approvals quite quickly. When the visa is approved, you then have 12 months to enter the country, and once you enter Australia, that is when your first 12 months of living there starts. So you don't use up any time of the visa kind of prior to your arrival. The visa only starts once you set foot in Australia. You can, leave and return to Australia as many times as you want during that year. So you can, travel to New Zealand, you could travel to Southeast Asia, come in and out of the country as much as you want. There's no restrictions there. You can work in any industry, and one of the restrictions, though, is that you can only work for one employer for up to 6 months. However, that excludes ANZ UK, especially if you're working as like a casual relief teacher or in any kind of supply capacity. You can work with us the entire duration of your visa. It would just mean that if you're taking a contract, you aren't able to work in one school longer than 6 months. So something to be aware of. However, we navigate this all the time with our educators. This is like one of the most popular visas that we see come into Australia, so we're well versed in it and we can really support kind of around those requirements and restrictions. On this visa, there is a list of countries that can access Medicare through an agreement called reciprocal healthcare. So that's kind of mentioned in the bottom right corner there. There's a list of countries that can access that Medicare for free. So you do have to apply for that. That's done once you arrive in the UK. We can give you some information on how to complete that as well. However, we do recommend that you purchase travel insurance if you're traveling with any expensive gear. For example, I used to travel with cameras and instruments sometimes, so I would always insure those. Buying, cancellation insurance for your luggage, always good as well. If you then are not listed on this country, for example, Canadians aren't listed on the reciprocal healthcare agreement, so I would have to purchase travel insurance for the duration of my stay. So just be aware of that as well. But it's quite easy to find different companies online to give you different quotes and different costs and everything. So lots of options there.
Annika, just to point in, sorry, Ireland can't get Medicare. If you're from the north of Ireland and you have a British passport, you can. Or if you are Irish, sorry, and you have a British passport, you can. But if you hold an Irish passport, you can't. Yeah.
That's good to know. Thanks for that, because I could have sworn it was on the list.
Unless it's changed and no one has heard about it.
That's fair. We'll look into it for everybody. Yeah. Wonderful. So we're going to look now at the 462 working holiday visa. So it is very similar to the 417. Really, the biggest difference is that it's gonna affect different countries. So different countries have access to this visa. In particular, like if you're traveling from, for example, the United States, you would have access to the 462, whereas a Canadian would have like a 417. Irish and British, again, 417, but some European countries would need the 462. So it just depends on where you're coming from. So you would need to just make sure you look into that and do that research. But essentially, it's very similar. Again, it doesn't take very long to process, but it takes a bit longer. So it takes a few days to process this visa, but it costs it costs the same, so 635 Australian dollars for the 1 year. And again, showing proof that you have the equivalent of 5,000 Australian dollars. You can, you've got 12 months to live in Australia. Once you enter the country, you can leave and come back as many times as you'd like. Work in any industry, you still have that same restriction that you aren't able to work with one employer, in particular for educators, one school, longer than 6 months. There are some education and English level requirements as well that you do need to meet. There is quite a detailed list on the government website when looking at the requirements for the visa. We can run through this as well when we speak to you. If this is the visa that's going to fit you best, we can run through that and make sure everything lines up for you. They don't have any access to like reciprocal healthcare or Medicare, so you would need your own travel insurance for the duration of your stay as well. So that's the visas and kind of an overview of how that works. And we can definitely chat about those in more detail then when we speak to you as well. Now we'll talk about the logistics of the specified work. So initially, what is specified work? You might hear it referred to as, farm work or regional work. In the past, particularly with the 417 visa, there weren't many options as to what you could do for the regional work. So people referred to it as farm work more because they often worked on farms. But basically what it is that if you want to extend your working holiday visa beyond 1 year, you need to spend 88 days or about 3 months worth of time working in the regions of Australia on registered settings or recognized settings. And when you have proof of this, then when you go to apply for the second year of your working holiday visa, you can then obtain that second year. You can show that proof and you can obtain that second year and stay longer on that. So to obtain the second year on the working holiday visa, you do need to complete 88 days of regional work. If you wanted to stay for a third year, that is possible as well, but you need to complete an additional 6 months in your second year. So up to you if you'd like to do that. One thing I will mention as well is that for British passport holders, you actually do not need to complete the regional work. There has been a new change, or the specified work, sorry. There's been a new change to the visa and everything for British passport holders in particular. So this is more going to pertain to Irish educators, European educators, anybody traveling from Canada or the United States. You will still need to do this to extend your visa. The regional work, the specified work, has to be completed before the end of your initial visa. However, you don't have to do it all in one stint. So you don't necessarily have to dedicate an entire 3 months. You could do 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, another few weeks here. As long as it's completed before the end of your initial visa, that's absolutely fine. You just need to make sure you obtain all the correct documentation from the settings that you're working in as well. Don't leave it until the last minute too, because if you're coming up to the end of your stay and you've only got 3 months left, you might be pushing it because depending on the work that you are doing, you might end up being in that location for potentially up to 4 months. In particular, if you are working on, like an agricultural farm or a setting like that, particularly like fruit picking, if the weather is too hot, you can't work for the day. You won't obtain one of your 88 days. If it's too rainy, again, you won't end up working. So you need to give yourself quite a bit of time to complete this just because you don't want to be at the very end of your visa scrambling. It just causes a lot of stress and you don't get to enjoy the regional work because it can be quite fun and it is a good experience. So don't leave it to last minute. In terms of where to find the specified work, how to go about looking for it, Facebook is a really good way to connect with other travelers and find settings that are advertising roles for working holiday makers who need that regional work. So there's a couple Facebook pages that we have mentioned here. So Farm Work Australia, They have some, like you can join that group and they list jobs there. Australian Independent Backpackers, again, another good Facebook page to use. There is the Backpacker Job Board as well, where they list roles, people who are looking for working holiday makers to complete this regional work. You can use Indeed. Sometimes there are jobs that pop up on there. Another way to find work is to go directly to a working hostel. So in certain parts of the country, you can find hostels that what they do is cater to supporting like people looking for that regional work. So they can connect you with local farms or other recognized settings, and then you can go from there. So that's a good way to meet others traveling too and kind of have a bit of a community there around you. But chat to people as well. You can, speak to other travelers and, get their input and, hear their stories, because word of mouth is huge around the travelers in Australia. So it's a good way to find out what place was good, what place was worth it, what place maybe wasn't great. So definitely speak to people. For a bit of guidance as well, you can also look to our guide to specified work for visa extension. So this is a guide that we've put together about kind of do's and don'ts of specified work. You can find this on our blog, and it's got links again to some of these websites and Facebook pages. So it's kind of got that in there for you. You can also find blogs, like for example, this is the Live in 10 Countries blog, and she details different options for, regional work, specified work. She's got some different information about, different states and areas you can work in and different roles that you can do. So finding resources like this and finding blogs and kind of that, detailed experience from other travelers is really helpful as well. There is a list of approved industries that you can find on the government website too when you make your application. On the government website, when you apply for your visa as well, the regional work will only be referred to as specified work. So if you're looking for something that details regional work, you won't find that. You'll see everything listed under specified work, which is also why we refer to it typically as that rather than farm work. So you can work in tourism and hospitality, plant and animal cultivation, fishing and pearling, tree farming and felling, mining, construction, bushfire recovery, recovery work in flood, cyclone, or other severe weather zones. So these are it's a much bigger list than there was a few years ago. I remember when I was traveling Australia, it was in 2018. I didn't end up doing my regional work just because I wasn't thrilled with the options that were there, and I only wanted to stay for a year anyways. So I said, I'm not going to worry about doing my regional work. But I did meet a traveler when I was in like Uluru, Kings Canyon area, so up in the Northern Territory. I was kind of way in the outback at this remote, like kind of campsite hostel place. And there was an American traveler, and she was on the 462, and she was able to work in hospitality regionally to be able to obtain her regional work, her specified work requirements. And I remember being really baffled because I thought, that was not an option for me at that point, but if it was, I probably would have done that. So they've now changed it. So the 462 and 417 did have different options available to them regarding what they could do for specified work, but now they're all the same, so you've got a lot more options. One thing to keep in mind though is that you do need to be in regional Australia. And also, unfortunately, teaching in the regions doesn't quite count unless you're going to be flying in and out somewhere very, very remote. Teaching doesn't count. But you can be doing all these other options. Like it has to be regional, but it actually, like, regional Australia doesn't actually mean that it's in the outback. It can just be, like a couple hours from Melbourne. You can be based on the Great Ocean Road as well and work there. So it's not necessarily going to be in the outback. We have heard stories of educators who've worked in like hospitality and resorts up in Airlie Beach, up in northern Queensland, where it's very popular and very touristy, or there's big tourist areas. They work in those hospitality, like those resorts and everything. That counts as regional work too. So it doesn't have to be the outback. You can also do things like, working in vineyards in South Australia. We've heard stories of educators who have gone to Tasmania and they live out of Hobart, the main city there, and then they work just, maybe an hour out of the city. So there's lots of options that way. You don't have to be like really in the sticks. Um, there's, we've heard of stories of friends of like some of our managers who live on the Great Ocean Road. They run a farm, like not far from the Great Ocean Road, and from the towns there where you can work on the silage farm. And basically, what they do is like they'll cover it's free accommodation for you to work on that farm. They'll give you breakfast. They give you access to a ute, so you can kind of drive to and from town. So some of these opportunities too are really quite good. There's not a whole lot of really, or if any, expenses coming out from your side, and it's a good way to save money. You could, even be based up in a regional resort too, and a lot of times they'll give you access to accommodation there as well. So there's so many different options. One thing we would say though is really, really, really do your due diligence on making sure that these employers that you're looking into are a recognized setting. They have to have the right paperwork to be able to give you that opportunity to kind of obtain the farm work requirements or the regional work requirements. And look at the area codes. On the government website, if you look at the specified work page around the visas, it'll give you a huge list of area codes for each state that count as regional. So it's a really good way to just double check everything. So there's loads of stories that we can tell you. We've heard lots of different examples from other educators and who've had friends who've done it, who they've done it, working as like a traffic controller, kind of, just outside the city, using the signs to kind of control traffic around construction and everything. Just pretty calm, not too hectic or anything like that. So there's lots of different, stories that we've heard and everything. I think you've got a few as well that you
Yeah,
mentioned.
of course. I actually didn't do my specified work. It turned out I ended up getting a skill visa. I would not recommend leaving it to the last minute as I didn't have time to do my specified work and nearly had to leave the country. So my advice would be research. Research before you come over, decide when you want to do it. And just to be aware as well, so tourism or hospitality, so say you want to work in a cafe, some regional places don't, it doesn't count. So you really have to look at the area codes. They usually say it's above the Capricorn. So just be careful if you do want to go into hospitality that you're not going to some, I don't know, random town 2 hours outside Melbourne and working in a cafe and it doesn't actually count as regional work. So just to be careful with that as well. I have people who have gone to Port Douglas and worked in a lovely hospitality industry. I even went up and visited them. It was fab. I have friends who worked on a stable farm in Scone, just outside New South Wales. Used to get the train to New South Wales, sometimes come back at the weekends. And they, yeah, worked on a stud farm, loved it. I've also had friends who went to a working hostel and ended up picking fruit. I've had friends who worked on cow farms. Yeah, what else have I heard? I've heard people going to the mines in Perth as well. It's just all about looking at what your preference is, but making sure you have enough time to do it, um, especially during the busier times, and we will be going through this in a second. If you're giving yourself just 88 days, it's not enough time because if you go to this area without it pre-booked, without deciding or being in contact with a farmer, being in contact with a manager in a resort, and you're arriving to different areas waiting to find work, realistically you're waiting for someone to finish their specified work so you can take over. So definitely give yourself, I would recommend like minimum 4 months because you might end up getting there and having to wait 4 weeks. And that's where I suppose um your idea of like researching it and everything and making sure as well that it's like a recognized setting, that it's not a scam, and that you will get your farm work out of it, or you will get, sorry, your specified work out of it as well. Um, and yeah, doing as much research as possible. Yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose we'll go on
definitely.
to when is the best time maybe to
Yeah,
do it.
definitely. I wanted to
Mhm.
make a mention too, because actually you made a good point. So you actually moved on to a skills visa. So
Mhm.
if for whatever reason maybe you came to the end of the age limit of the working holiday visas, or maybe like it just isn't feasible for you to do the regional work, but you do want to stay long term in Australia, you can consider a skills visa. It is a bit of a process. However, it is doable. But it's an alternative. But if you are thinking of maybe doing, yeah, like 2 years in Australia, plan your regional work, make sure you've done that research,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's good to know you have options. However, like, yeah, the easiest option really kind of more or less would
Yeah.
be to just do your regional work and have it organized ahead of time.
Yeah, and I have a few people who are after coming in back in or coming over in the last month or two being like, "Oh, I don't want to do regional work. I want to get a skilled visa." And if I'm like, if you think you want to stay next year, you have to do your regional work because the skilled visa is you're waiting for them to invite you. And if it goes past past the end of the date, you won't be able to get your regional work done. You won't have a choice. You'll have to leave. So my advice is always get your regional work done. It gives you your second year. Then you can apply for your skilled visa and you have 2 years to get it. So just to be aware of that as well. And I suppose when to complete specified work. So looking at when is the busiest month or terms for teaching are definitely term two and term three, so between April and September. So I would avoid completing your regional work during these times as you're going to get so much work. Even like I'm in Sydney and even we weren't able to fill some of our bookings for the end of term two just because there was so many people gone on their regional work. And like as in I know there's a crisis in Sydney, say with all the teachers, but yet we weren't able to fill bookings. So there's not, it's just the right time to be in the right time to do your work as well. So arriving from April to September, take advantage of the busiest time of year and work as long as you can until the end of the school year to save for the holidays. So school year finishes the middle of December. You have 6 weeks off there. Them 6 weeks are unpaid. Them 6 weeks are a brilliant time to go and source your farm work or your regional work. Um, term one can be quiet for work until the midterm, so take advantage of the break in work to complete your specified work between December to February. Okay, these are warmer times. These are considered summer. However, if you go to Queensland, you're still getting the summer. If you go to Perth, it's probably twice as hot. Melbourne will still be warm. Like you can still be in Sydney, but be traveling out to Orange and staying there during the week and coming back, or even Broken Hill. So just to be aware of that, that especially if you're coming during them times, yes, it'll be summer, but this is the best time to get the work. If you're arriving between October and March, you'd be able to get work a few weeks until the end of term. So it's I suppose October is the start of like term four. Would that be correct? I think so.
Mhm.
So as you can imagine, there's people who've been in jobs from term one, term two, term three. So just to be aware that it does start to get busier in terms of people start coming back from their regional work. So we're close to the summer holidays, and term one is quieter than term two. So take advantage of this time. Okay. Working from say April, May, June, July, heading off in July. A lot of people I've seen as well have went straight into their regional work. I would recommend it because it means that you're not settling down to have to uproot your life again for 3 months, to have to come back and find a new house and find all of that. It's a good idea to go and do your specified work. It's a really good way of making friends. It's a really good way of being able to travel and seeing new parts of the world before you settle down. If people are like, oh, I'm really unsure whether to do it, just you can go say you're going to Sydney, Melbourne, see how you feel for a couple of months. If you think, yes, I want to be here this time next year, then you have your confirmation to go and do it. Um, that's kind of my best advice.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashling. Great. Um, So we'll run through kind of quickly some of the process of being able to teach in Australia and how it works with our support and just making the journey in general. So what will happen is when you make an inquiry, you're going to have an initial conversation with myself or one of the other global team members who's based in the UK, maybe even one of our European consultants. And we're going to, yeah, chat with you about your plans, where you wanting to go, the time of year you want to be there. We'll discuss, how to do your teaching registration, things like that. So we'll make sure that you are eligible to teach there, and we'll walk you through timelines of when you need to apply for certain things and just kind of help you get that organized. We'll give you a checklist to make sure you've got everything ready to go. From there, we chat through, the compliance process and what we'll need to do on this side. Typically, it's myself and the team that is here in the UK that does like reference checks and everything for you. So we run you through that process as well. That's typically done just before you make the journey to Australia. Um, then before you do arrive, you are put in touch with one of the team members, like Ashling. If you're heading to Sydney, you're going to speak to Ashling. If you're heading to Melbourne, you're going to speak to some of our other consultants. They will speak to you before you arrive, and then they were going to, have you into the office after you land in Australia to kind of finish off your registration, make sure all your paperwork's ready to go, and you have access to our app and everything like that too. So once that's done, then you're going to be cleared for work. You're going to be sent out to schools as soon as you're ready to go, and then you'll be in the classroom and building that experience and getting to know Australia and kind of working with all those new colleagues, teachers, and people to learn from. So that's the process, kind of in a nutshell. Ashley, do you want to run through kind of community and everything?
Of course. So community and events, we hold. So you come in and you do an individual registration with someone from the Sydney team. Then we conduct in Sydney induction sessions every second week, which means that you get to meet everyone. Usually we have an event that you can head to maybe in a few weeks' time. This one is the 3rd of August. We're going to watch the footy. So everyone who's arrived between June and July have got tickets all free, and we're going to go and have a picnic and watch the footy all together. We also have like a Facebook group set up as well for people who are coming over. And we have like welcome events, usually every quarter or we're starting to do them now bi-monthly as well. So there's always like a community of people to meet. It's really nice. It's really nice to meet other people who are just off the plane, potentially by themselves. Being solo, I was solo myself. And it can be like not hard to meet people, but it's always nice to go to an event. If you're scared about showing up by yourself, I can guarantee there'll be 10 more people there that came by themselves too. So I always recommend to come. If you want, bring a friend. And yeah, it's a really nice way to find a little community over here of teachers as well.
Yeah, definitely. We also try to host some pre-departure events too, in the UK and Ireland. A couple times of the year we try to do that. So typically we'll make a round through kind of England, Scotland, maybe Midlands, and then Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So we do kind of at least 4 events, during those kind of pockets, sometimes up to 6 events. So you can keep an eye on this side with us because we host those as well. So it's a good way to meet people before you leave too. Maybe that'll impact kind of where you want to go. So definitely keep an eye out for those because it's a nice way to just kind of give you some comfort in knowing that you're not alone and you've got maybe somebody to make the journey with. Wonderful. So, oh yeah, Ashley, do you want to run through this one? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. So why teach and travel with ANZ UK? So you get support from across the globe. You are from DOT, from the minute you reach out to the global team, you are guided, as I say, from one person to the other, and then eventually to either a casual days in school or a role if that's what you prefer. So a point of contact in your home country and then a point of contact in the Australian offices. So technically we are around the clock. Technology, we have a ready to work app which allows you to manage your availability. So if you want to work Monday, Tuesday, you update your app to say you want to work Monday, Tuesday, and then you can take Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, and all you have to do is block it out on your calendar. So it's very easy. Visa Services, we're proud to offer support in terms of advice, setting up your bank accounts, things like that. We are in partnership with Darren from Visa Go Migration Agents, who are brilliant. And if you have any visa questions, they're the people to go to. Affiliations, we're partnered with a number of travel groups and sports teams as well. So if you're looking for a footy club or netball club, cheap holidays or a tour, let us know. Events, we've just gone through them as well. We host webinars like this as well. So look out for maybe if there's a Spotlight in Sydney or Spotlight in Melbourne one that you're thinking of traveling to those areas. We host regular social events as well before and after you arrive. And as well, just on our website, we have a huge amount of resources and guides from blogs to info, graphs to webinars. You can see all of these on our Vimo page as well. So yeah, so including Australian bank accounts, national insurance number, and area guides. And when you first arrive in Australia, there's a little bit to set up. But having done it myself, and Annika has done it as well, we're there to kind of guide you as best as possible. So yeah.
Thanks, Ash. Wonderful. So, a bit of things to remember then from this webinar and kind of things to, bit of homework for you to go and do. So you can check out our Guide to Specified Work blog that I mentioned. That's on our website. If you research, Google the ANZ UK blog, you can find that in the search bar there. So it's very helpful. A lot of do's and don'ts in there for you, which is really handy. research specified work jobs, make sure everything is, kind of registered and above board, and you get all that organized kind of before you arrive to those destinations. Make sure you've got it lined up kind of ahead of time. Don't leave it to the last minute. Um, Oh, you think of a timeline as well of when you want to do your regional work. Yeah, definitely fine if you want to kind of give yourself a couple months to see if you want to stay, totally fine. Just make sure that you're trying to do that over periods of time where there's going to be, not as much maybe teaching work available, so you can take advantage of lots of teaching work. And then also keeping in mind that you need to do that before the year runs out. We also have some more free webinars coming up. So the next one that we're going to be hosting is going to be next week, July 30th. It's going to be Where in the World Could You Teach? So we're going to have another Irish teacher who actually taught in Dubai as well and has some friends that taught in Australia. And we're going to have my colleague Rowan on that, who's from Australia himself. He's a former teacher too. So join us for that. If you're watching this in the future, kind of when that's finished, we will have a recording of that, so you can find that online as well. And I'm not sure that we've got any questions or anything, but we appreciate you watching the webinar and joining us for this. And we're happy to help with any questions. Again, we support you entirely along the way. You always have, communication with myself or one of the team here in the UK, and then you've got contact with the team in Australia. So you have dual support on both sides to help make the process as easy and as smooth as possible. So yeah, we're always happy to answer any questions and looking forward to supporting you on your journeys.
Yeah. And best of luck. So exciting. Thanks so much for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.